All right, so what we're gonna do today is I have two really awesome experts with me who are going to deep dive into kitchens and bath. I'm gonna talk a little bit about what's going on in the consumer mindset to set the stage off, and then we've got two people, I mean, I could pretty much just like leave and go take a nap because they've got this on wrap. And then you don't have to hear me talk as much. All right, so before we get started, what I'd like to do is to have Dennis and Kelly give us a little bit of insight on their history and what they do today. So Dennis, do you want to start out giving us a little intro?
Well, sure.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks, Deanna. So my name's Dennis Webb. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Fulton Homes in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been there a long time, 26 years. Oversee the sales and marketing and the $45 million design center, which is something that is quite near and dear to me. So my retail background, I spent 23 years in the retail business in men's clothing. And that kind of made me thought, well, maybe I'll use that to something else. So I had worked for this guy named Ira Fulton, who owns Fulton Homes. He's Arizona's largest philanthropist. He's given away over $300 million to various charities. A bunch of schools at the ASU school are named after him because he's given them $300 million. So he's a pretty good guy.
That's a good reason to name something after him.
Yeah, so I worked for him in Southern California, the clothing business, and then he sold the clothing business to another company. I stayed with that company for a year, not knowing that he had a non-compete clause and he couldn't hire anybody for a year. So after a year, I got in touch with him and he said, well, why don't you come over and help us build houses? And I said, okay, great. I don't know anything about houses. I live in one, but that's about it, And he said, well, you're good at people and you're good at analyzing things and you really understand the retail business. I think there's a lot of things in the retail business that you bring to the home building business. And so that was 26 years ago, and I just had a great time.
Well, and I've known Dennis for a few years, and the more that I get to know you, the more that it clicks why that retail matters so much in what you do day to day, and he's going to share some of that with us in a little bit. And then Kelly Mangum, that's right. Mangum, I got it right the first time. I'm going to get it right.
It's one of those things. When I got married, I thought that my maiden name would be much easier than my maiden, which was Brazel.
Yeah.
Should have kept the maiden name.
I know, at this point.
You want to give us a little intro?
Yes, so thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Kelly Mangum with Builders Design. I'm currently coming to you from Charleston, South Carolina. I'm originally a Georgia girl at heart. I've been in the business for 18 years. I started out as a weed design consultant in a design studio for a home builder in the Southeast called John Whelan Homes and Neighborhoods, and worked my way through that company and finished my career with them as a corporate director of design, doing a lot of what Dennis does now, managing design studios, making sure that our clients had the best options and available selections to them to really help that customer experience. Now I work with Builders Design, and on the flip side, we merchandise model homes, very different from a interior decorator, if you will. Our ultimate goal is to furnish these homes to help our builders sell homes for faster and for more money. What we were talking about earlier is kind of identifying the why before the buy. So really showing off those high margin items such as sculleries and flooring and all of those other details that we really want the buyer to focus on in the home and not just the furnishing. So really creating that partnership with our builder clients.
Fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a little bit of consumer insight. Then Kelly's going to talk it through some trends. And then Dennis is going to talk about how they do the merchandising and set up their center. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So if you have questions, you can either jump in as we're going or you can save them for the end. So when we survey consumers, what we've learned is that 67% of consumers are cooking more frequently than they were before the pandemic. And this was a year ago that they were doing that, and we just resurveyed on it, and they're still cooking more frequently. So while the kitchen was always a very important part of the home, it's grown in importance in the past 2 years. And when we talk about how consumers might want to shape that space, and we know that we're trying to fit more into the footprint of the home, we said, what would you be willing to give up? And they said that having some eating space around the island is perfectly acceptable seating area, and that having that separate dining space isn't necessarily something that they need in their home. It's not a need, it's more of a want. And when we talk about kitchen island design, this is really coming from asking them how they live in their home and how they use their kitchen. And they're saying, I really need help with the clutter. It's not just about having a place to eat. It's not really about having a place to cook. It's about how they're using that kitchen island, that kitchen peninsula, that space. And yes, obviously it's used for meal prep. But it's also used to eat really quickly. It's used to store kitchen items. It's used to drop things off. You know, sometimes that's where keys live. Sometimes that's where book bags live. Sometimes that's where you're sitting and you're doing homework or crafts or hobbies. Some people, like, there's still quite a bit of people that are using it as a workspace as well. So they haven't quite shifted to working in that home office. And as we look at the kitchen features with the greatest impact on design, homeowners believe that they get their most, we call it bang for their buck for the stylistic side, on the countertops and cabinets. And that's where they're willing to spend. And this pushes appliances and the flooring and some of these other pieces down. So they're really focused on the countertops and cabinets in the kitchen. And then, all right, I'm going to let Kelly talk about this. I'm even going to skip this slide because we could talk about kitchen color all day long. There's a lot to do in this. There's a debate. I'm skipping this. But neutrals are there, especially in some of the homes across the country where people are really focusing on these things. And when we asked about the cabinet finishes, pickle or whitewash stain and high gloss acrylic are really sort of showing towards the top along with glass. And some of these laminate or stained things are becoming less popular as we're seeing throughout. And if you've heard me talk before at this conference, it's not the first time you've heard me say easy to clean, easy to clean, easy to clean. Let's talk about easy to clean some more. But that happens in both the kitchen and the bathroom. Ta-da, like I set myself up for the next slide. And easy to clean and durability are definitely outranking aesthetics. I've said it 1,000 times. I don't need to keep meandering on this point. But those two, making it easy to clean and durable, are priorities in the consumer mindset. So looking at the bathroom, here we go talking about color again, those neutral palettes are still really popular. And then they're picking things to add a little bit of visual interest there. But it's about a 2 to 1/3 split. It's not exact, but about 2 out of every 3 consumers are looking for something subtle and calm. And then there's that 1 out of every 3 that are looking for something a little bit more bold and energizing. Again, here we are on the color palettes, but we ask consumers, where are you going with your color palettes in your bathroom? And they're leaning on the neutrals with the whites and grays. All right, so let's talk about market share for a little bit. The past few years have been rough, and I'm sure we'll dig into this a little bit as we move throughout the session, but market share is shifting based on who can deliver materials. Raise your hand if you had to substitute a material in the past year or two. Hi, everybody. Yeah, okay. And so we've been talking to building products companies and telling them, like, make it really easy to substitute your product. And so sometimes having that conversation up front, like, okay, if something happens to this, what's next in line, is something to keep in mind.